Paratmanamekam Jagadbijamadyam Niriham Nirakaram Onkar Vedyam Yato Jayate Palyate Yena Vishvam Tamisham Bhaje Liyate Yatra Vishvam. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Dear devotees, you all may remember that a couple of months ago we studied the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And the main topic of discussion in the 15th chapter was the knowledge of the true nature of the Supreme Reality. This 15th chapter is known as Purushottama Yoga. And there Bhagavan Shankaracharya says that Sri Krishna presents to us Bhagavat Tattva Jnanam, the true nature of the Supreme Reality. Bhagavat Tattva Jnanam. And the outcome, the fruit of this knowledge, the fruit of this knowledge of the true nature of the Supreme Reality. This is a very important point. The true nature, not as we imagine. It is Tattva Jnana, Bhagavat Tattva Jnana. And the outcome of this knowledge is moksha, moksha phalam, liberation. So this is what we discussed in the 15th chapter a couple of months ago. Today we shall study from today. The 15th chapter was discussed in 8 sessions, if you remember. So from today for the next couple of weeks, we shall study the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which is known as Kshetragya Vibhaga Yoga. It is the exposition of two things, Kshetra and Kshetragya. We shall see what these terms mean. So this 13th chapter, essentially, it deals with the exposition of what is Kshetra and what is Kshetragya. And in and through the exposition of these two entities, called Kshetra and Kshetragya, the 13th chapter presents to us the true nature of Ishvara. Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanartham kshetra adhyaya arabhyate. This Kshetra adhyaya, this 13th chapter, is being started for Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanartham. It means to correctly determine the true nature of Ishvara. Now you see, for all mumukshus, for all sadhakas, this is the main topic with which we are actually interested in. Every sadhaka, every mumukshu wants to experience God. I would hesitate to use the term God, English term God. It is better to use the Vedic term called Ishvara, because this English term God has got all kinds of connotations. The Semitic ideas, which is totally different from the idea of Ishvara found in the Vedas. So this 13th chapter is going to present to us the true nature of Ishvara, not as we imagine. This point should be kept in mind. It is not the God of our imagination, but God, Ishvara, as it exists, as it is, which can be known only through the Shastras. Now, this true nature of Ishvara, it is actually speaking introduced in the 7th chapter itself. Now, we haven't studied the 7th chapter. In the 7th chapter of the Gita, already the subject of what is the true nature of Ishvara has already been introduced. In the 13th chapter, that matter is further elaborated and discussed in detail. So, what was spoken of in the 7th chapter? In the 7th chapter, which also deals with determining the true nature of Ishvara, there Krishna says wonderful thing. Krishna says that this Ishvara is made up of Ishvara's own two prakritis, two-fold nature. One is para prakriti and the other is apara prakriti. This comes in the 7th chapter. Ishvara himself is made up of Ishvara's two prakritis. These two prakritis belong to Ishvara, Ishvara's own two-fold prakriti. One is para prakriti and the other is apara prakriti. And discussing that, Krishna first tells us about what is apara prakriti. So, what is apara prakriti? There Krishna says, Bhumi rapo nalo vayu kham mano buddhirevacha ahankara yamme bhinna prakriti ashtadha apareyam. We should stop with this word, apareyam. So, what is this apara prakriti? Apara prakriti is pancha tattva. Bhumi, apaha, anala, vayu and kham. Kham means akasha. Bhumi means earth. Apa is water. Vayu is agni. Anala is fire. And vayu is wind or air. And kham is akasha. This is the pancha tattva. Akashat vayu, vayu ragni, agni apa, adhya prithvi. This is what is pancha tattva. Interestingly, Vedanta tells us that this entire world which we are experiencing, it is all made up of pancha tattva only. That is why in our Indian terminology, in Sanskrit language, and even in all the vernaculars, we refer to this so-called material world as panchabhautika, jagat. Jagat is panchabhautika. That is also the other term we use often, bhautikavada, materialism. This material world, the world which is made of matter, it is actually nothing but the pancha tattvas, akasha, vayu, agni, jala and prithvi. And not only that, man, buddhi and ahankara. So these are the eightfold ingredients which go into the making of the so-called the entire material dimension of this world. So we are here essentially discussing two dimensions. See, we are discussing this world. This world has got two dimensions. One is the material dimension, which is made up of these 8 ingredients, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Jala and Prithvi, and Man, Buddhi, Ahankara. There is nothing beyond this. This covers the whole ground of the so-called the material world. And Krishna says, Apareyam. Iyam apara. This is what is known as apara prakriti. Ishvara's lower prakriti. That which deals with matter, jada, insentient objects. Is it not? In this world we come across all kinds of insentient objects. They all come under the category of apara Prakriti, the lower Prakriti. But whose Prakriti it is? It is Ishvara's own lower Prakriti. That is the idea. So, apareyam. And then, compared to this lower Prakriti, then Krishna says, he says, apareyam itastu anyam Prakriti vidhi me param. Know that there is another Prakriti which is known as Para Prakriti, which is superior to this material dimension. So, what is that Prakriti which is superior to this material dimension? That Prakriti is Jiva Bhutam Mahabahu Yayedam Dharyate Jagat. Jiva Bhutam. So, what is Apara Prakriti is so-called matter, and the Para Prakriti, the higher dimension of Prakriti, is that which is consciousness in the form of individual souls. Pure consciousness or Atman or Brahman in the form of Jiva, Jiva Bhuta Mahabahu Yayedam Dharyate Jagat. It is this which is holding this entire universe which we are experiencing. To put it in very simple language, without any complications, Krishna is saying, this entire world which we are experiencing, it is made up of two ingredients. One is consciousness, other is matter. We are all a mixture of consciousness and matter. Simple. And this matter is what is referred to as Apara Prakriti. And the consciousness side inside us. See, this is description of yours and mine. It is our description which is going on. We, as this body-mind complex, if you see, we all of us are a mixture of both these Prakritis. Apara Prakriti and Para Prakriti. Consciousness and matter. This matter is the lower Prakriti of Ishvara, and consciousness appearing in the form of Jiva, individual soul, is the higher Prakriti of Ishvara. Both these are Ishvara's own Prakriti. That means some beautiful conclusions have to be drawn. What are we? A bundle of Apara Prakriti and Para Prakriti. But whose Prakriti? Ishvara's Prakriti. That means, is Ishvara's Prakriti different from Ishvara? It is not. Finally, in the 7th chapter, it will be shown that it is all Ishvara alone who is existing. That is a beautiful conclusion which will be drawn in the 7th chapter. It will be shown that everything is a mixture of this Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. Shankaracharya there in the commentary very beautifully he comments, Prakriti Dvayadvarena Aham Sarvagya Ishvaraha Jagata Karanam. Acharya Shankar says that Prakriti Dvayadvarena, in and through these two Prakritis, means in and through matter and consciousness, Aham Sarvagya Ishvara, I am Ishvara, is Jagata Karanam. This Jagat which we are experiencing, from where is it proceeding? It is proceeding from Ishvara and Ishvara's twofold Prakriti, Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti, consciousness and matter. So what we are referring to as consciousness and matter, these are the two natures of Ishvara itself. So is there anything existing apart from Ishvara here? This is the wonderful conclusion which will be drawn in the 7th chapter, that everything is Ishvara alone. The whole chapter is a long list of Ishvara manifested in so many ways. Anyway, that is the 7th chapter. So as I said, in the 7th chapter, the main subject matter is to determine the true nature of what Ishvara is. Now that very topic is here now further elaborated in the 13th chapter, which is known as Kshetra Kshetragya Vibhaga Yoga. A clear exposition about what is Kshetra and what is Kshetragya. Now, as I said, in this chapter, 13th chapter, the main topic is nothing else. We have to ascertain the true meaning of what is Ishvara. Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanartham kshetra adhyaya arabhyate. So let us keep this very clearly in front of our eyes, that this study of this chapter is initiated in order to clearly ascertain and determine what is the true nature of Ishvara. Is it not a very important subject that we are tackling? Because we are all interested in, we use so many terms. In Kathamrit, you will repeatedly come across these terms. Ishvara Prapti, Bhagavat Prapti. But what is the meaning of Ishvara? The Ishvara of our imagination is one thing. But what is Ishvara as Ishvara is? Not the imaginary idea of Ishvara. Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanartham. What is this Ishvara tattva as Ishvara is? That is going to be the main topic of discussion in this chapter. So, in this chapter, in a very beautiful, majestic manner, Krishna introduces this subject in the first two verses. In fact, the first two verses, in the first two verses itself, the whole secret has been placed before us. What Krishna had to speak about the true nature of Ishvara has been presented to us in the first two verses itself. In rest of the verses, many other topics are touched. It is being emphasized and further elaborated in different ways. So what is Krishna saying in the first two verses? Beautiful. Let us see. Krishna says here, Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram iti abhidhiyate etad yo veti tam prahu kshetragya iti tadvidaha. What is the simple meaning? Simple meaning of this first verse is what? Idam shariram kaunteya. This shariram, this body is what is referred to. This body, Krishna says, is kshetra. Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram iti abhidhiyate. The people who are experts in this field, tadvidaha. Tadvidaha means people who are well versed in this subject. They say that this body is kshetra. Kshetra literally means field. And then the second line says, Etad yo veti. That which is knowing this body is what is called as kshetragyam. Kshetragya iti tadvidaha. Kshetragya means the knower of the field or the knower of the body. So two things are presented to us here. One is kshetra and the other is kshetragya. Kshetra is field. Kshetragya means the knower of the field. Kshetra refers to body and kshetragya means the knower of the body. Simple. Now here, this is a very profound observation. In fact, the very foundational and radical ideas of Advaita Vedanta is packed into this single verse. Certain things we have to extract and try to understand correctly. If you just look into all the human dealings, human vyavahara, all our vyavahara, empirical dealings, our day-to-day dealings, all our activities, all our vyavahara, empirical dealings are based upon two entities. What are the two entities? One basic entity is what? I. Is it not? In all vyavahara, The basic entity is what? I. I means aham. Is it not? You can place your hand on your chest. I means what? I. This is the basic entity. Without this I, there is no vyavahara. All the empirical dealings take place in and through this I. Now, what is to be observed is, everything which is distinct from I, it is referred to as this. Is it not? What is dealing? What is the so-called empirical dealing or laukika vyavahara? In all our day-to-day vyavahara, from morning till evening, what have you done? You as I have been dealing with so many these things which is referred to as this. Is it not? Anything which is distinct from I, it is always referred to as this. Is it not? The person who is sitting next to you, will you be referring to that person as I? No, you will say this person, this man, this woman, this table, this wall, this fan. Anything which is distinct from I is referred to by the pronoun called this, idam. So, all the so-called laukika vyavahara, the day-to-day vyavahara, empirical dealing, is the interaction between I and this. Is there any other meaning to our laukika vyavahara? Our empirical dealings, if we just investigate, it is a continuous dealing with I and things which are existing distinct from I and which we refer to as this. Is it not? We don't refer to anything which is distinct from I as I. We always refer to things distinct from I as this. Second point. So first thing is, in all our empirical dealings, it is an interaction between two entities, I and this. This is that which is existing, separated or distinct from I. This is the first point. Now the second point. Can this I become this? Can this I ever become this? Can I ever say that I am this, I is always I, and this is always this? These are two entities which can never be mixed up. Is it not? This is the second point. Third point which we have to learn from this first shloka of the Gita is, now this should be the homework today when you go back from this class. We need to determine one thing. To which category does this body belong? Does this body belong to the category of I, or does this body belong to the category of this? Again, I repeat. We have to now determine. This determination has to clearly take place. To which group does this so-called body belong? Is this body I, or is this body this? This is the crux of Vedanta. Presently, whenever I say I, what is our idea? In our I, this body is included. Is it not? In our I, in the meaning of the I, this body is included. Now the question is there right or wrong? The Vedanta will say, this body can never belong to the category of I. It is always this. I can never be this body. This body is always this. That is why, see Sri Krishna, how he starts. He is referring to this body, shariram, as idam shariram. The shariram is always idam. Anything which is separated from I is referred to as idam. Idam means this. So once again, let me just go back to the main subject. In all our vyavahara, laukika vyavahara, worldly dealings, it is an interaction between two entities, aham and idam. Is it not? Aham means I, idam means this. Now we have to determine and try to understand, come to a conclusion, where does this body fit into? Does it belong to the category of aham or does it belong to the category of idam? Presently, in our ignorance, we have unquestioningly taken this body to be aham. That which is idam, we have taken it to be aham. This is the root of all the problem. So right in the beginning, Sri Krishna is telling this great truth that this body is not aham. Body is idam. Idam shariram kaunteya kshetram iti abhidhiyate. So this body which is idam, it cannot be aham. Now what is aham? That is the next line. It is a clear distinction between what is aham and what is idam. What is I and what is distinct from I. So this body belongs to the category of idam. It belongs to the category of this. It is an object. Just like this table is an object, just like this fan is an object, just like this sofa is an object, this body is simply an object. It is an object of perception. It is an object of knowledge. Somebody else is knowing it. Somebody else is perceiving it. So body is not aham, body is idam. Idam shariram kaunteya. Kshetram. This is what is known as kshetram. It is field. It is kshetram. It is an object. Shankaracharya says, any object is the thing which is known or which is perceived. Now the next question is, who is perceiving it? Somebody is perceiving it. Etad yo veti tam prahu kshetragya iti tatvitaha. The experts in this field, they say that there is another entity. That entity is knowing this body. Now see, inside this body itself, there are two entities. In all of us, we are a bundle of these two things. One is kshetra and the other is kshetragya. One is the body which is an object, which is referred to as this. This body cannot be I. And there is another entity which is the knower of this body. That knower of this body is what is referred to as kshetragya. The knower of the field is referred to as kshetragya. So experts say that this is the twofold classification. Now each one of us, every human being, in all of us, these two things are there. The body which is known and that entity which is knowing this body. Now let us go back to the 7 chapters classification. Now that which is known, this body is apara prakriti. It is matter. It is jada. And according to the 7th chapter, the para prakriti is what? Jiva bhutam mahabahu. The consciousness appearing in the form of individual souls. Jiva. So in this very entity, every body, there are two things. One is body and one is the knower of the body. The knower of body is the para prakriti, twofold prakriti. The consciousness side of our personality. So our personality has got two dimensions. One is matter, other is the consciousness. The conscious dimension is what is knowing this so-called material dimension. Now comes the second verse. Now this understanding of the kshetra and the kshetragya, the body and the knower of the body, is this the complete picture of reality? No, this is not the complete picture of reality. The complete picture of reality is given in the second verse. It's a beautiful thing. In the second verse, Krishna says, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. This is what is the climax. In every body, that which is the Kshetragya. In every body, there is a Kshetragya, the knower of the body, the Jiva. What is the true nature of this Jiva, the knowing principle? In all the bodies, this knowing principle, this Jiva, is actually nothing but that Parameshwara, Asansari Parameshwara, Shankaracharya says. So interesting. Now we have come to that complete picture of reality. So you see, there are three entities here. One is Kshetra, which is this body. Second is Kshetragya, which is the knower of this body. And the third entity is Ishvara, Parameshwara, which is appearing in the form of Kshetragya. So Ishvara, Kshetragya and Kshetra. So presently in our own, the psychophysical system, we see that this body is there and there is a knower of the body. But what is the true nature of the knower of the body? The true nature of the knower of body is nothing but Ishvara. Krishna says, Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi. Know me, that Parameshwara, Asamsari Parameshwara, to be the Kshetragya in every living being. It is Ishvara who is appearing in the form of Kshetragya in every living being. Then he says, Kshetra Kshetragyayor Jnanam Yat Tad Jnanam Matam Mama. This is the real knowledge. The knowledge by which we know the true nature of Kshetra and Kshetragya, that knowledge is the true knowledge. So just by understanding Kshetra and Kshetragya, the knowledge is not complete. There is a third entity, apparently third entity. Actually, there is not three entities. Finally, it will all boil down to the Advaitic view. Ishvara alone is existing, nothing else. It is that one Asansari Parameshwara which is appearing in the form of Kshetragya and Kshetra in all the living beings. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata kshetra kshetragyayor jnanam yat tad jnanam matam mama. Now to understand this, I will use two simple illustrations which is given in all of our Vedantic books. Shankaracharya talks about it beautifully. One is, let us try to understand it. These three things what we have talked about. One is this body, which is material, and there is knower of this body, the so-called Jiva. Now, what is this Jiva? What we refer to as Jiva is what? Atman is the light of consciousness. Those who have studied Vedanta, they all know. Atman means the pure light of consciousness. It is this light of consciousness, when it gets reflected on this body-mind complex, it appears as Jiva. Jiva Bhutam. Consciousness in the form of individual soul. What is this consciousness in the form of individual soul? It is nothing but that pure consciousness getting reflected in our antakaranam is what is Jiva. And it is that reflected consciousness which is Kshetragya. Try to understand this point. It is that Chidabhasa which is referred to as Kshetragya. So in this body-mind complex, there is Chidabhasa. This Chidabhasa is reflected consciousness. This Chidabhasa is what is referred to as Kshetragya, the Jiva. But this Chidabhasa, this Abhasa, the Chid Abhasa, this reflected consciousness, where is its source? Which is that light which is getting reflected in the Antakaranam? That is Sakshi Chaitanya. The real Chaitanya, the Atman, the Parameshwara. It is Parameshwara, the light of consciousness, which is getting reflected in the Antakaranam, appearing as Chidabhasa or reflected consciousness. So all our empirical day-to-day dealings, they are being done by the in the light of the reflected consciousness. You see now, this so-called inert body, it is appearing to be conscious. How? It is a light of Ishvara which is getting reflected in the Antakarana, which is making this inert body appear as if it is conscious. This is the connection between Parameshwara, the reflected consciousness, and this Jada Sharira. It is one continuum. There are not actually three things. It is one continuum, one entity. It is Ishvara alone which is existing. Ishvara getting reflected in the Antakaranam, appearing as Chidabhasa, appearing as Jiva, appearing as Kshetragya, and through that this inert body appears to be conscious. This is the complete picture of this reality. So it is this Chidabhasa which is being referred to as Kshetragya. And this Chidabhasa, through that, this inert body appears to be conscious. Now, if this Chidabhasa, when we inquire into the true nature of this reflected consciousness, we will be discovering the source of this reflection. What is the source of this reflection? Is Parameshwaram. Now, to make this understand, I will use another illustration. This is slightly difficult. You have to, because we are not used to think in this line. This is a critical inquiry into the true nature of Ishvara and our own self. No sentimentals here, no sentiments here. It's a sharp investigation into the true nature of each one of us. Through that, something wonderful will come out. Some wonderful change will come out in our drishti. This is what Upanishads talk about. Another beautiful illustration which Shankaracharya gives, not here in this bhashya, in this verse it is not there, but he speaks elsewhere in many other places in his commentary to make us understand this point. He says, just imagine, there are 50 pots kept on the ground. 50 pots filled with water. 50 pots filled with water with different colors. In one pot, the color of the water is yellow. In the other pot, the color of the water is blue. In the third pot, it is red, and so on. 50 pots with water having different colors. It is kept on the ground, open ground. And up in the sky is the sun shining. Okay? Now, this sun which is totally unconnected with the pot and the water. Mind the language. The sun which is totally unconnected with the pot and the water. The sun gets reflected in the waters of the pot. In each pot, that sun which is absolutely unconnected with the waters of the pot, in every pot, the sun is getting reflected, is it not? When the water in the pot moves, it will appear as if sun is moving. And that reflected sun, now there are three things here. One is that sun which is totally unconnected with the water in the pot and the pot. And there is second entity, that is the reflected sun. And there is third entity which is pot and the water. Beautiful illustration which Shankaracharya gives. Not here but elsewhere. Again I repeat. One is that sun which is in the sky, which is totally unconnected with the pot and the water in the pot. Apparently there is a second entity. That is the sun which is getting reflected in the water in the pot. And the third entity is the pot and the water. Now what is this illustration and what is getting illustrated? One is that Parameshwara, who is absolutely unconnected with this so-called body-mind complex. And that Parameshwara is getting reflected in this pot-like body-mind complex, the reflected consciousness. There it is the reflected sun, here it is the reflected consciousness. And this body is just like the pot and the water contained in that pot. Three things. Now, that reflected sun, just imagine, is that reflected sun really existing independently? Question. Is that reflected sun really existing separately and independently? Does it have a separate, independent existence? Does this reflected consciousness or so-called Jiva or Kshetragya have an independent and distinct existence? Does it have? It doesn't have. Again I repeat, that reflected sun in the waters of the pot Does it have an independent existence? Its existence is completely dependent on its source, which is the sun up in the sky. Is it not? Without that sun up in the sky, can there be this reflection? It cannot be. That is one point. Second point, now just imagine that reflected sun is thinking that I am this pot. Owing to a mysterious ignorance and Maya, Shankaracharya says that reflected sun, reflected in the water of the pot, it is thinking that I am this pot. I am limited to this pot. Owing to a strange, inscrutable ignorance and Maya, this reflected sun has started to think that I am this. Now some extremely compassionate guru comes and tells that reflected sun, my dear reflected sun, you are just a reflected sun. You please find out your source. You please find out your source. And when that reflected sun will begin to investigate into who I am I limited to this small pot? Just imagine the reflected sun here. When that reflected sun will try to investigate into its own source, where is my source? Where will it end up? That is the question. Where will it end up? It will end up in discovering itself as that supreme sun which is shining up in the sky. Is it not? And when it discovers itself as that supreme sun shining up in the sky, from there it will see that in all the pots it is I who am reflected. Is it not? From that sun standpoint, once you have come to that point, from there you will see in all the pots, all the reflected sun, they are nothing but me. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva kshetreshu bharata. In all kshetra, in all pots, it is I who am shining in the form of so many kshetragyas, in the form of so many jivas, in the form of so many reflected consciousnesses. It is I, the Supreme Consciousness, who am shining in the form of all this. This is the extraordinary conclusion which Bhagavan Krishna teaches us, and this illustration which Shankaracharya gives, the illustration of the sun getting reflected in the pot. So just to wind up this beautiful discussion, so Bhagavan Krishna says, we are all just like pots. Pots and the reflected sun in the pot. This body is just like a pot. And our Chetana, our consciousness is actually speaking, it is a reflected consciousness. And this reflected consciousness, it is whose reflection? It is the reflection of Ishvara himself. But owing to ignorance, this Chidabhasa, this reflected consciousness, this Kshetragya thinks that I am this. Now when this Kshetragya investigates, when this Chidabhasa, when this reflected consciousness begins an inquiry into who I am, where is it going to end up? It will end up in discovering that Asansari Ishvara. It is that Ishvara. And from that Ishvara standpoint, it will say that it is that Ishvara which is shining and getting reflected in all the kshetras, in all the pots, in all the body-mind complexes. It is one Ishvara which is shining in the form of so many jivas. Actually speaking, there is no jiva, it is all Ishvara alone. What a profound discovery. Now this is not something theory. One has to deeply meditate on the subject to make it a fact of human experience. So once again, I just wind up the whole discussion. In these two verses, if we just see, the true nature of Ishvara is presented by Sri Krishna. Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanartam kshetra adhyaya arabhyate. This beautiful chapter of the 13th, dealing with kshetra and kshetragya, is being started in order to ascertain what is the true nature of Ishvara. Till we have not come to the true nature of Ishvara, that will be described now in the coming verses. Now, what is this true nature of the Ishvara? But first, let us understand what is this Kshetra, who is the Kshetragya here, and what is the true nature of the Kshetragya. The true nature of the Kshetragya is Ishvara. It is Ishvara who is appearing in the form of the Kshetragya. It is that Parameshvara who is appearing in the form of the Jiva. It is that light of, supreme light of Brahman consciousness which is appearing in the form of the reflected consciousnesses in each one of us. This is the beautiful conclusion. Idam shariram kaunteya kshetramitya vidhiyate etad yo veti tam prahu kshetragya iti tadvita. Second line is extraordinary. Kshetragyam chapi mam vidhi. Know Ishvara to be the Kshetragya in all the Kshetras. Know that sun, supreme sun, to be the reflected suns in all the pots. Means all of them is nothing but Ishvara. Now you see Swami Vivekananda's that same famous poetry, that poem which he has, Sakhar Prati, he says, Bahumukhe Sammukhe Tumar, Chadiye Kothaye Kuji Cho Ishwar. Ishvara is shining in so many forms just before you. Which other form of God do you need? This is the most beautiful form of God. This is the conclusion of Vedanta. This is the conclusion of Vedas. This is the conclusion of Gita. This is the conclusion of Shankaracharya. And this is the conclusion of Vivekananda. What is Ishvara? Is Ishvara limited to a particular form? No. Vedanta will say, you see, you inquire and find out whatever we are seeing, it is nothing but one Ishvara Tattva alone. There is nothing distinct from Ishvara actually existing. Now this point will become clear in the coming verses. To the first two verses itself, the supreme secret is revealed. Then, verses 3 and 4, in verses 3 and 4, Krishna says, Tat kshetram yaccha yadrikcha yad vikari yatascha yat sacha yo yat prabhavascha tat samasena me shrunu. He says that Tat kshetra, this kshetra which we have talked about, kshetra means body or any object. Anything that which is known is kshetra. The knower is kshetragya. Again, it's a distinction between I and this. Anything which is known will become this. It cannot be I. Again, I said, our homework for today's class will be, we need to first determine this. To which category does this body belong to? Does this body belong to the category of I, or does this body belong to the category of this? This should be clear. Presently, I means we have included this kshetra inside the meaning of I. This is actually kshetra. It is an object. It is actually to be referred by the pronoun this. Just like I refer to this table as this. I won't say this table is I, is it not? Will you say this table is I? Within the meaning of I, is this table included? You cannot include. This table will always be referred to by the pronoun this. Similarly, this body belongs to the category of this. It is not I. This body can never be aham. It is always idam. It is idam shariram. So, now Shankaracharya says, let us further try to understand this kshetra or this field or this so-called material dimension of reality. Let us try to understand it in further details. He says, hear from me in brief all about that as to what the field is. Let us try to understand in detail what this field is, what this kshetra is, what this material dimension is. Let us try to understand in detail. And what its changes are, yat vikari, what are its modifications, And from what cause arises what effect? It says here in Sanskrit, Yad vikari yatascha yat. Yatascha yat means from what causes what effects emerge. And what are the different modifications of this material dimension? Let us try to understand in detail what this material dimension is, what are its different modifications, and what are the different causes from which the different effects emerge. Means try to understand idam properly. Idam, which refers to the so-called material dimension. Always we have to keep it in mind. Again I say, there are two things, I and this. I, actually speaking, refers to the consciousness. I can never be matter. This is the great Adhyaksha Bhashya of Bhagavan Shankaracharya. Absolutely inimitable. Where Shankaracharya discusses these two things, I and that which is opposed to I. How can I become this? I can never become this. I can never be a table. I is always I and this is always this. These two things cannot get mixed up. But somehow Shankaracharya says, owing to an inscrutable Mahamaya, we have confused this I for this. This body which is actually this, we have today taken it to be I. But when you truly investigate into the meaning of I, you will discover that this I which is Kshetragya, the I which is the reflected consciousness, this I will be discovered to be nothing but Parameshvara. Aham Brahmasmi. The true meaning of I can be nothing but Parabrahman. All other idea of I is only an imagination. This is what Vedanta will teach us. It is the outcome of just ignorance and Maya. So here in the third verse, Krishna says, so let us try to understand. So we need to understand what this idam is. The idam refers to the material dimension, the matter dimension, the jada dimension, the insentient dimension. Let us try to understand this dimension clearly so that we understand that we are not this. And the true meaning of aham is Parameshwara. So we need to clear cut this vibhaga, kshetra, kshetragya vibhaga. The clear cut distinction between matter and consciousness. I cannot be matter. I always means consciousness. But today in ignorance we have taken I to be matter, I to be this body. So in the third verse, Shankaracharya says, let us try to understand this so-called kshetra in its detail. And not only kshetra, but also what is Parameshwara. Sacha yo, that Parameshwara, yat prabhavascha. What are the different powers of this Parameshwara? Tat samasena me shruno. Listen from me, samasena, in brief, the true nature of Ishvara and his different powers, and as well as the so-called the material dimension in detail. The third verse says. And in the fourth verse, Krishna says, Rishibhir bahudha gitam chandobhir vividhai pratak brahma sutra padaishchaiva hetu madbhir vinishchitai. He says that Rishibhir bahudha gitam. Rishibhir, the different rishis have spoken about this. What we are going to discuss? We are going to discuss the true nature of Ishvara. Ishvarasya tattva nirdharanam. That is what we are going to do. So this has been spoken of. This has been sung by Rishibhir Bahuda Gitam. Great rishis have sung about this. Chandobhir vividhai. Prathak chandobhai vividhai. Chandas mean the different sentences of the Vedas. The different sentences of the Vedas, they have spoken about this very thing. The true nature of Ishvara. And Brahma Sutra Padaishchaiva Hetumadbhir. And the very Hetumadbhi means rational. The rational sentences indicating the Brahman. Brahma Sutra Pada means those sentences which indicate Brahman, which are very rational, they also have spoken about this very thing. This verse is just in praise of this great knowledge. The verse 4, it is just a praise of this great knowledge of Ishvara. Rishibhir Bahudha Gitam, Chandobhir Vividhai Pratak. Even the rishis have sung about this great knowledge, and even the Vedic sentences have spoken about it. And not only that, then even the sentences which indicate Brahman and the sentences which are full of rationality, even through those rational sentences, the glory of this Ishvara Tattva has been presented. And then comes verse number 5th and 6th, which we will take in the next class. Verse number 5 and 6, they deal with what is Kshetra in detail. So in the first verse, only the topic has been introduced, that idam shariram kaunteya kshetram ityabhidiyate, that this body is Kshetra. Now verse number 5 and 6 will further elaborate what is this material dimension, which we are referring to as Kshetra or the field. That we will take it up in the next class. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.